Muted.
Hello everybody, this is Roger Schultz with Frontier Precision. I want to welcome you all to another Frontier Precision webinar. This webinar is going to be focused on Trimble Positions. The topic is expediting your field to office workflow. So we're going to go through a few different things in this webinar, cover a couple of quick topics. We have a hard stop at noon Central Time here. And we're going to go ahead and stop at that point. I'll make sure that we've got some room for questions at the end. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat bar, and I'll be going through a few of those and hopefully answering a few of them here live during the webinar. If I can't get to any of the questions during this period, we'll be reaching back out to you with an answer if we have one, and we'll go from there. So we'll get the webinar started here. So the agenda today is we're basically going to cover three basic topics. First off, simplifying data management. How do I take data that is coming from the field and get it to push directly into my Esri Geo Database? Specifically, we'll be focusing on TerraSync data for all the topics here in our webinar, and just really trying to show kind of the efficiency of how Positions takes what used to be a very complicated workflow with many steps to go from the Trimble software into the Esri software, and we're going to show you how it can happen very quickly. We're also going to go from a geodatabase into a data dictionary. So from an existing geodatabase that you already have built in an Esri ArcMap format, we're going to take that geodatabase and use its schema, including domains and background information and attribution, and publish it directly out into a data dictionary that you can use in TerraSync for field data collection and for form-based field data collection for your field users. We're also going to look at creating a geodatabase from existing Trimble field data, including an SSF, and you can also do it with a data dictionary file. If you have those existing files, you can use their embedded schema to create a geodatabase with the proper domains. This can be very helpful for you if you're still working with shapefiles, haven't built geodatabases in the past, or just need a quick jump from some existing field data into what a geodatabase format looks like. So first off, I want to take a moment to take a step back and look at, well, what is Trimble Positions for those of you that aren't familiar with it. Trimble Positions is a software that has many different pieces and components, which at times can make it a little bit confusing. We're going to be focusing specifically on the add-in for ArcGIS. This desktop add-in acts as, like the image shows here, a central cog. It connects our office data to our field data and connects it all using that geodatabase format. So the plugin for ArcGIS sits inside Esri's ArcGIS ArcMap, and that plugin allows me to work in an environment that I'm already familiar with. I'm not learning another software, I'm not learning another field component. I'm using what I'm familiar with and adding just a little bit of tools and capabilities that add on the ability to read and understand Trimble proprietary software, stuff coming from the field, such as TerraSync data. The other beauty with Trimble Positions is if I've got multiple different softwares in the field, such as TerraSync, TerraFlex, Esri's ArcPad, maybe you have ArcGIS for Windows Mobile, these basic data structures, as well as a couple others, those field data formats can all be interconnected in one hub using one geodatabase. And so I can take all this field data from multiple different sources and plug it directly into my database structure. It also allows me a great platform to be able to do some of my differential corrections. And then when I want to do exports and go to different formats, I am already using what I'm comfortable with. I'm using Esri's ArcGIS ArcMap and going directly from there to any other format that I might need, whether it be PDF or CAD or a simple shape file, something along those lines. So the first piece that we're going to take a look at is simplifying this data management. This tricky aspect that used to be taking TerraSync data and getting it to fit directly into a geodatabase format in Esri's ArcMap. So a lot of the pain has now gone away with this workflow. What we're going to do is take a database that I had pre-created. We're going to, I had already pushed the data out. I went out in the field this past weekend and enjoyed some of the beautiful weather. Went outside, gathered some data, and then I was using a Geo 7X to gather that data. I was using the decimeter unit. Using that unit, I also was connected with MnDOT's VRS network, which was providing me with a real-time live solution. So the majority of my data is already at that high level of accuracy that I would expect to achieve using that VRS network. So I had already pre-established the Geo Database. I had pushed out a data dictionary for TerraSync. I gathered my data, and now I'm coming back into the office, and I want to move that data from the field into my office environment. So I'm going to open up ArcMap here real quick. And you can see that I've already got an MXD established. I've got some basic symbologies put together, but none of my data has been brought in yet. So using Trimble Positions, which adds on these two basic buttons at the top, the first being my administration window, the second being this dockable window at the bottom, which is this button that looks like the Geo. Using these buttons, it allows me to create projects, manage my data that's coming in and out of the field, and act as my central link between the field and the office. So if I take a look here and open up the dockable window, I can also then open my administration window and check my projects. I can see that the green one highlighted here is my current project. I can see what workspace it's actually working in and that it is connected correctly. And I can hit OK. I also get a little notification down here in the bottom of the desktop add-in showing me what project I'm currently working in. So all the pain that used to come from having to export and import and move data files around from the field to the office is eliminated, and we're going to show you how quick it is here. It's simply clicking this check-in, check-out button. We're going to check in some data, and it's going to automatically publish to my Geo database. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to check in an SSF from TerraSync. This is the file that I gathered previously this weekend, and I can hit open. It's then going to drag data directly into my Geo database and publish it in. How do I know that this session is in my Geo database? Well, I can verify it. I can verify it by simply opening up an attribute table and seeing that all the files that I gathered out in the field are already in. I also pre-established within my project that I wanted to see some metadata parameters. If I come over to the back end here, I can see that some of these metadata parameters are coming over. See what project it's connected to, the device that I was using, and the session time, as well as some estimated accuracies and such. So it was just that quick. That was it. That's really all there is to it. One click, check it in, and as long as everything was pre-established ahead of time, my data is now directly in there and in my Geo database. If my data was collected using uncorrected data, I could also use Positions as a platform to post-process my data directly within here after it's been checked in. And then I can update my features, and the geometry will update with that new corrected position. The next portion of the webinar we wanted to talk about was the ability to take an existing Geo database and create a data dictionary. So we're going to take a step back and say, well, once when I created this data file and went out and gathered the information, how did I get that schema to come across? So this is also a way that's sped up your efficiency and allows you to now be more efficient working from the office and giving you something that's quickly and easily deployable into the field. So let's take a look. I'm going to open up what we were previously working in here, and I'm going to click on my administration window. Within my administration window, I want to select the projects. Once I'm in that project, I make sure I'm selected on the proper one, and I hit this edit button. This edit button takes me back to allow me to edit any of the parameters that I had previously published out when I had first created the project. But it adds one new option, and that's this first page. The first page that it adds allows me to take the schema and all the individual settings that I had built into the first project and save them into a data dictionary file. When I click Save DDF, it's going to ask me, okay, where do you want to save it? So I'm going to navigate to a spot here on my desktop that I have pre-established. And save that DDF. Well, how do I know that it actually saved it? Well, let's take a quick look and verify. I can verify it by hitting this Edit DDF, and it's going to launch a tool that you might be familiar with. For those of you that have worked with Pathfinder Office in the past, this is the Data Dictionary Editor. It has now been added in as a portion of the installation package for Trimble Positions and will be included with your Trimble Positions license. It then allows you the ability to view the data dictionary and save it out. Since I had worked with this data dictionary in the past, it already updated a few of my symbologies. Generally, when I come directly across with new existing data, all of these are going to show up as point, line, and area generic symbologies. So now that I've published this data out, I can make some of those changes. I can come in and change the symbology. I can change the default settings, such as logging intervals. And I can even come in and change some of the attributions, such as required fields, and including in repeats, and potential hiding certain attributes, as well as conditional attribution. All of these things can be added. I will put out a warning, though. We do not want to add new features or new attributes into this into the data dictionary editor, because it's not going to be able to link back to what our existing geodatabase is, and we'll have some issues. So I only encourage you to change things that are parameters and settings that will affect your field data gathering, but not what's going to affect the actual data itself. If you need to make changes, do it in the geodatabase and publish it from there. Just to give you a quick snippet here, I can hit Preview in TerraSync, and we can see what this would look like out in the field. There we go. So just like that, I've quickly published out to a data dictionary file, and I'm ready for field data collection. So there's one last thing that we want to show you here to expedite your workflow, and that's going to be, all right, how do I go from existing TerraSync data or existing, whether it be an SSF file or a DDF file, and how do I actually build a geodatabase from it? And it's not just going to build your basic geodatabase with feature classes, but it's also going to include all of the attribution that you built into that data dictionary or into that SSF file, and it's also going to build the domains in the background. So any domain that you want established in that geodatabase, which would relate to drop-down menus or ranges, all of those will be already built into that geodatabase by positions. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I need to come into an absolutely untitled, complete blank ArcMap document. I can't even save and title this, because if I do, it's going to give me a glitch, an error. So I'm going to come in and go into a project here, and I'm going to create a new one. The project type is going to be TerraSync, import from DDF or SSF. I am going to be pre-established within a WGS 84 format, and so therefore my data frame properties are going to be set to that 84 format, which is what Trimble is going to be using in the background by default anyway. So this will make sure that everything lines up without any amount of datum shift or reference frame incompatibilities. I simply select the SSF that I want to use and choose a folder where I want to build this new geodatabase. It then brings me into my layer properties. The layer properties are going to extract the individual layers that come from the SSF file. Each of these individual layers that come over now allow me to add individual metadata for transfer, as well as apply accuracy thresholds. All of this information can actually be stored in a new feature, which is called a feature type library, which we will be covering in potentially another webinar or on our blog. You can look for more information on that to come. So once I've established all that metadata, I can then change my project name and create this new project. And when I hit create here, we can watch the table of contents as it's going to actively build a geodatabase for me. So I've just built a geodatabase. Well, how do I verify it? Let's check it out. So if I open up Arc Catalog here, I can go into that live folder. First I need to refresh here. Come into that live webinar folder, and I can see that, yep, there's all my features that came over from my SSF, the same ones that we also saw in that data dictionary editor. I can also come into the properties under the geodatabase itself and verify that all the proper domains have been built with their individual drop-downs, coded values, and ranges. At this point, if I actually had data directly in this SSF, I can check it in just as easily again, just by simply clicking Check In from SSF, selecting the file, and running the import. So just like that, I now have data in this MXD in my geodatabase, and away we go. So just as a quick recap here, we showed you a couple of different ways that you can use Trimble Positions to very quickly take data from the field and put it into a geodatabase. We showed you that if you had an existing geodatabase, you could very quickly go to a data dictionary. You could also edit that data dictionary by using the data dictionary editor, which came with your Trimble Positions login and license. We also showed you how to build a geodatabase very rapidly by using a Trimble file type. So at this point, we're going to open up the floor to any questions that you might have. We want to thank you guys all for coming and for observing some of the expedited workflow that we have. So I'm going to run through here a couple of the questions and that came in and answer them as best I can. So at this point, we actually don't have any questions in the queue. So if you've got one, please feel free to type it in at this point, and we can go ahead and answer it from there. So while we're waiting on questions here, I'm just kind of thinking on my feet here. I know that sometimes there can be some trouble points or some pain points that might occur by moving data in and out and around. And so just want to draw attention to a couple of those potential pain points for you to help make this workflow a little bit quicker and easier. One thing when I was originally building, this is the second one that I did from import, you have to make sure that you start from an exact blank MXD file. Let me just show you what happens if I try to create a new import project. So if I try to select a new import project, it's actually going to give me this error. And the reason is because it needs to actually build a completely new geodatabase. One of the ways that Positions tends to work is it likes to work best when there's only one geodatabase in an MXD. So we always like to make sure that we are only referencing one geodatabase at a time in one given area at a time. The other thing that it's doing is it's realizing that there's an existing established data frame property, which is your coordinate system. And this tool is part of what it's doing is establishing that. So it needs to start from that blank untitled format. One of the other things that we can potentially run into, and it's one of the common questions that we always get, is when I'm moving data in and making sure that it lines up, sometimes you know, how do I verify that my data truly is lining up? And that's where we can really start to talk about some of our best practices about shooting control and using other things. I don't want to rely on, but there always is the visual aid of putting on an aerial image. I actually did load an aerial image into this just to show that, hey, this data is lining up and looks good. So you can kind of get a little bit more of a visual on some of this data so that it truly is where it needs to be and it's not just plotting somewhere else in the world. One of the other things that we can also run into is by the creation of a new project if you're actually using a different coordinate system. So for instance, if I was to change my coordinate system here to something like a UTM, when I come in and create a new project, it's going to tell me that a datum transformation is required. So one of the beauties of Trimble Positions is that it's going to establish this datum transformation from whatever you're working in the field, which is always the default of a WGS84, and it's going to apply that transformation, which is going to be established right here. So if I'm using my map document as a NAD83 UTM zone, I can make and define that transformation here using one of Esri's transformations. So those are just a couple of the pain points that I wanted to maybe point out. Seeing as though that there are no questions at this point, feel free to always reach out to us. You can always reach us at mapping_support@frontierprecision.com with any questions, comments, concerns you might have, and we'd be happy to reach out and answer any of those questions as they may come up. So thank you everybody for attending, and we're going to conclude the webinar.